welcome to my YouTube channel and my tutorial today on how to make this angled card. There are a few tricks to it, so I thought I would show you how I created it so that you can recreate it yourself. First of all, let me show you the things that I have used to create. The colors I'm using are charcoal and Journey ink. I'm also using this holiday banner stamp and thin cuts. And then the paper colors I've used here are Linen and Journey. Before I started this video, I cut these twigs out and I also cut these little berries. I cut and stamped the banner, and I wanted to show you before I stamped it one of the things that I did to get this light blue color underneath the words. The light blue color comes from second generation stamping, or inking your stamp, stamping off, and then stamping directly to the paper. Lovely that this is. Okay, luckily here I have a second die cut piece. So let's stamp that. Now here's a fun question. Do you pre-cut your pieces with the die cut, or do you stamp and then die cut? For the purposes of video and most of the things I do, I tend to pre-cut and then stamp, but I know that's only one of the options. Okay, so that is now stamped with the charcoal ink, and what I want to show you is how I got the lighter color of Journey behind the Merry Christmas. Now earlier you saw this was second generation, and I wasn't quite happy with how dark that was. So I'm gonna actually do a third generation stamping. So I'm gonna ink this up in the Journey. I'm gonna stamp once, I'm gonna pull it off, I'm gonna stamp again, and hopefully that took off enough ink that when I stamp this down, it will have a lighter color. And look at that. Do you see the difference between second generation and third generation? I like that a lot better because now my Merry Christmas is gonna show better. So let's go ahead and grab the Merry, inking that up also in the Journey ink, but this is the full 100% strength. And then here is my Christmas. And the words in this stamp set are already a little bit curved so that when you are stamping, you don't have to worry about curving them, but you could use a small alphabet or another word and curve it yourself if you wanted it in there. Okay, now we have our stamped Merry Christmas and all the pieces that we're gonna stamp. Let's come back and take a look at our card here. So the next part is getting this embossed print that's happening right here on the edge. And so let me show you the tips that I have from doing that. The card is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And what I did was I took a piece of my linen cardstock. I'm using the light side, and I cut it to 4 1/2 by 6. Then I used my poinsettia embossing folder, and I embossed on the light side of this paper. That leaves me a little bit of a border around here. And the reason I did that is so that I can stencil, have room to hold on to the stencil or to glue it down. Now I'm gonna show you these 3 stencils. These are from the September-October catalog. It's a series of 3, And this one, hopefully you can see that. This one is the full poinsettia flowers and the different berries. And then it lines up with this next one that are the holly leaves, the insides of the poinsettias and the stems. And then finally, you've got the detailed greenery pieces as well as the inside veins of the poinsettia leaves. Now from our convention, Katie was demonstrating how to use our stencils, and she had a really great idea. So what she recommended was putting some kind of mark in the upper right-hand corner, because lining these up can be tricky because it may look like it fits this way or this way, and just lining them up can be, it's possible to do without it. But her tip was to put in the upper left corner a mark. I just put my initials, and that helps you so that when you do go to line this up, it makes it easier to do so. So let's start with the stencil that has the big leaves. And I know that this also was the upper corner of my embossing folder. So here I go. I'm going to get this on here just very lightly. And as you can see, I colored the berries with the Journey ink. I did the leaves here with the Journey ink, and then the insides and the stems with a light touch of the charcoal ink. So I'm going to repeat that same pattern as I go along here. I used a tiny bit of the linen ink and just brushed it in the middle to capture the inner parts of these leaves. Okay, I think I'm all set up here to do my stenciling now. And I'm going to remove that so I don't get any ink on it. And just wanted to point out this tool holder, which is great for holding your brushes while you're trying to not get ink where you don't want it to be. And here is my linen. And I'm using the Close to My Heart blending brush for this. And I'm going to tap or pick up some ink. And the linen is going to be very, very light. I have used this with other grays like charcoal. So I'm going to just test this on here because I want to make sure that it's not going to come off too dark. And it really does come off light. And then I'm just going to use this and do a light brush in the center of these flowers. So it just picks up a hint of color to add a shadow. Let's see, I've got one right here. Now, when you look at the card, you think, well, you're not going to use that whole thing. But the beauty of this is that when we're done stenciling and putting this together, what you'll have and how we cut it, you'll have two pieces. So you can make two cards with this. Okay, so you can see very lightly in here a little bit of that linen ink. I'm going to go ahead and put this back on, and I intentionally started with my lighter ink because now I'm going to go with the Journey ink, which is a little bit darker. And if I want to hold that down, I can grab a bit of my masking tape here. You could also use washi tape. And I'm just going to tear off a piece of that and use that as a way that I can hold this stencil down and attach it to the paper and not have too much movement as I am stenciling. So my next part here, I'm going to pull out the Journey ink. And I'm actually going to start with by using a smaller brush that I purchased off Amazon. And what I like about that is that it will keep inside these little small pieces without getting too much into my other flower petals. So I'm using that, and I will get a little bit on those flower petals. I'm not gonna fret over that. These are definitely handmade cards, and I can appreciate that, and hopefully the person who receives this can appreciate it too. Now you can see I'm tapping off some of that ink on my Post-it note here because it does come off really dark, and I'm just trying to add a little light bit of the journey to all of these little dots that are right here. It's also not going to matter that I'm getting this off the edge a little bit because we are going to trim this down to a better size so that we can work with this. And I'm more kind of dabbing this than I am brushing, because that helps it also so that my stencil doesn't move too much. And there's going to be a variety of color when I lift this. I see one little berry I missed. He's kind of tricky to get in there because he's by a leaf. But there we go. So I've got, once we take this off, you can see I've got all those berries with the exception of a couple. I'm going to put this back on, and this is kind of the trial and error part of it, but that's what is so great because you know exactly how you're going to match this back up. I see a couple berries here that I missed, and then I see some berries right here that I missed. So I'm going to add some ink to those as well. Let's see if those worked out, and it's looking pretty good. Okay, I'm gonna call that good. If you miss a couple, that's okay. There are my berries. Now you can see I did get a little blue on the edges. I'm not gonna worry about that. And to take care of my stencil, when I'm all done, I'm just gonna spritz it a little bit with some water or stamp cleaner and wipe it off so it's nice and clean for the next time I stencil. Now I know here where the top corner is gonna be, so I don't have to do too much fussing of turning this around and trying to figure out where this is to line up. And actually, as I'm doing this, you can almost feel as you're turning it, you can feel it kind of settling in to where these little greenery branches are on here. Mostly what I want on this stencil is the inside veins of the bigger flowers. So I'm gonna actually use my masking tape and kind of use that right here to hold on to that. I'm also gonna take my brush, my smaller brush this time as well, and just go over those leaves. And again, I'm just kind of pouncing that in. Now I chose not to color the holly on this card and to keep the poinsettias as the highlight. So you will see as when you look at this and I'm all done that the holly leaves are just kind of a background. They still have texture, they still show a bit, but they're not highlighted. I pull that away and you can see the really light touch, but the veins of the poinsettia leaves. Now, you could go brighter or darker with that. Really, it's all about a personal preference. And then finally, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this last one. Again, I'm gonna line it up. And what I wanna focus on this one is the inside berries of each of the poinsettias. And I'm gonna do that with my charcoal ink. And there we go, we have all of those pieces. Now, let me look at my card. The other thing that I can do with this charcoal and a little bit lighter is the stems of some of these berries. So I'm gonna come in and just lightly touch on those. Okay, I think I'm going to call my stenciling finished. And here are my stencils. Now my stems weren't lined up perfectly. I don't think you're going to see or notice that once we get this whole card together and the embellishments on it and the focal point. Just works as a nice little background. Okay, I've cleaned up my stenciling things and got them out of the way. And now I'm going to bring in my paper trimmer here, and I am going to trim down just on the edges of the embossed and stenciled paper so that I can use the exact size, and I don't need those extra pieces that I had on there for the stenciling. Really, that's just a personal preference as well. So, okay, so this whole thing is the size of a full card, 4 1/4, almost 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And what I'll do is I'm going to take my journey piece, which is I just cut 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm going to put an even, so there's an even edge all the way around here. And then I'll trim that also. So let's just grab my adhesive here. And I'm going to go through the middle because remember, we're going to make this work for 2 cards. And so I don't want it to fall off and not be part of it. So using that, I'm going to just use my paper trimmer again and trim it so that I have an even edge of the blue journey matted all the way around it. Now let's take my card base, and you can see, pull in the card that we finished here, you can see that this isn't like a perfect center thing. There's a little extra at the top and the bottom. And so what I did was I took this card and I kind of decided that I wanted, let's just measure this here so that you can see it. So my card's 5 1/2, and I wanted this a little bit, where these two meet, just a little bit above center. So for me, that was about 3 inches. So that's kind of where I want my focal point to be. These are going to overlap, and you're going to create that bundle on top. So it's not going to matter that it's not perfect, but it has that. And then I'm just going to turn this a little bit more until it's kind of in a position that I like. I do like a little bit extra on the top here. And let's just grab my tape, and then I'm going to put tape down the edge here. I've still got that little piece that kind of is my guide, and put this on here. Okay, and now with my eraser, I can take off a little bit of that extra adhesive. There we go. And now I'm going to just trim this off, lining up. You want to be careful not to trim the card, because then you'll have a card front instead of a full card. So let me do that again. So I've got another piece that's right here that we can use for a second card. Grabbing my scissors, I'm just going to use my scissors for this little part here and this little bit here. And there is the front of my card. Now I'm going to grab 2 other things. One is a second card base, which I have here, and I'll show you how we can add that. And then I have a 3 by 3 square of journey colored paper. And again, this does not have to be exact. Remember, we're going to be building that focal point and cluster there, but I just wanted to create and have enough that I can use this for both of my cards here. You could bring that in if you wanted, and that makes it a little more center to the card. But I liked it with it a little bit, the focal point a little bit off to this right side. So again, I'm gonna do some tape here and here, and then a little bit on the edge. I'm gonna grab that and put that in right about there. And you know what might be interesting is no two cards are gonna look the same, correct? They're all gonna be different, even as you look at my card here, my two different cards here. But that is, again, the beauty of a handmade card, right? Okay, let's bring this. Now, if we, again, aim for that 3 inches up, I'm gonna use my mat and just kind of put this in that area. Doesn't have to be exact. And now I've got my second piece of paper, the second half of my card here. Let's put some adhesive on that, and then adhesive down the side here. And just kind of grab that as my focal point. Okay. And then some more of my Journey square. And now that I have those both together like that, I can bring in my paper trimmer and use this, line it up with the edge and trim this down. I'll do the same on this side. And then I'll grab my scissors and just trim off these two edges. So you can see with one piece, you can create the two cards. Okay, let's grab our pieces, and I like to just think about making a flower bouquet underneath my sentiment. And when I do that, I'm looking for things to go in a triad. So I've kind of got a triad going here. I'm also trying to highlight some of these angles that I have going here, but not be right on top of them. So this pretty much follows how I did that first card. Okay, I noticed that I just ran out of adhesive. This is the close to my heart repositionable adhesive, and it's new in that it is also refillable. So you can buy packs of 2 to refill those. So let's grab this and get our, what do you think of this blue Journey and kind of silver and gray theme? Does that work for you as a Christmas card? I just find it's fun to not always turn directly to red and green. I'm gonna grab some foam tape. Just again, a little more texture, a little depth. And then before I put this down, I will also grab some of my silver thread. The silver thread is something that we used to carry, and I still have a lot of, because both silver and gold, I think especially silver, because that tended to be my favorite. Here's my silver thread, and I'm just gonna unwind a bit of it here. And then I like to take a bone folder or something kind of with a flat edge, if it's got a wrinkle in it like it does, and just kind of straighten that out. Does the opposite of your wrapping tape. And then wrap this around my fingers 2 or 3 times, maybe 4. I trim this off of the spool, and then I'm just pulling my different ends and pieces to create multiple levels of this circle. And what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull off this tape here on this side where it's going to be coming out of, and I'm going to actually stick this right here on my foam tape, and then I'm going to move pieces of this up and down to the side so it kind of spreads out the decoration of that. And let's take off this last pieces of foam tape. And that's gonna go right here where those two elements meet. And then finally, I've got these little berries that I've cut and stamped, and I'm gonna tuck those in here. And I tuck like another little one kind of right here, giving a little accent to that angle that's coming through right there. Pull this down a little bit. It was a little hidden for me. The final step for this card was to add a little bit of my silver Stickles to these berries. And I didn't want it to have a lot of depth, but I wanted it to have some shine. So I just put some on there and then moved it around with the tip. So you can still see some of the details of the berry and the stamping, but I've got a little bit of design there. I'm going to actually use this piece of paper. Here's my little trick, and take off a little bit of that right there. Sometimes you get more than you want. There we go. Spread that around a little bit so I can see the details of those berries. And there you are. There is a Christmas card, the first of many to come, I'm sure, as we begin our preparations for celebrating our holiday season. Thanks for coming by. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel and share it with others. I also love to hear your comments about what you think.